Okay, so we're back. Finally, after 3 months hiatus, Ken O'Neill and myself, Christophe Clugston, and we got not a lot of time today to talk to you, but we want to talk about some new areas, something that's really good. And once again, I just got to put in that this is fluentfighting.com is my major website. Go there, get information. I'm wearing my zero distance warfare. This is part of the military training that I do. And Ken and I have just talked about some things that we think are very important. And Ken was just explaining something that goes deeper than just the physical part that can apply to all your life. And I guess just go back over that. I mean, because we're going down a good road here, I think, basically.
Yeah, and you kicked it off what you said about what a lot of guys are doing with kids classes and all, but I've noticed with my guys, things have morphed over the years. I mean, back in the 80s when I was full-time at this, my whole focus was on one thing and one thing only. What works the best that I can do, that I find that I can transfer to other people that helps them survive in combat situations. And I had a lot of police testing this for me. I had a lot of FBI guys, guys testing stuff that can do it because their job's dependent on it, et cetera. But what's happened for me over the years is, people's reasons for doing this stuff change, and yet the kind of people I attract, they still want to do things that are realistic, that aren't like so far off in outer space, they don't have a snowball chance in hell of working in a situation. So they still want things that are realistic, but they want to do them in such a way that they're not limping around every day at work for the next 3 and 4 days, and they want to work out that's interesting. And I teach from a very conceptual base in that a lot of the principles and a lot of the things that we role play out in our classes that are very realistic are about learning how to adapt and use a good blend of intuition combined with really fast strategic thinking to resolve conflict. And I'm saying resolve conflict rather than fight, because what I'm getting at and what you and I just talked about for a minute is the idea that the principles of doing that kind of a thing combatively are principles that translate to all kinds of situations. It's not always physical, but that ability of developing your mind and getting your body to respond intuitively to things is something that you can carry over into being in a bad car accident. A lot of guys ask me like, oh my God, this is grueling. We're on the ground and we're crawling. Our hands are bound, our feet are bound. We're crawling, we're not allowed to raise our knees. This is grueling, hard work. I'm like, yeah, you're getting a workout, right? Yeah. I said, what else are you getting? Oh shit, what if I was in a 5-core pileup and my limbs are all busted up? Now I know how to move my body like a snake with 2 broken arms and 2 broken legs and get out of the fucking thing before it blows up and I burn to death. And I go, yeah, on the physical plane, thinking of physical events that happen, that's an example of something that's not exactly combat application. But your ability to breathe, your ability to move, to have extreme freedom in your joints, when you fall down a set of stairs when you're 80 years old, know how to fall. I mean, all these things have applications to daily life that a lot of folks aren't thinking about, And I think that's part of one of the things that as guys start to learn this, they go, wow, this goes way beyond anything you do just with fighting. So the good thing about that is not only are you expanding how you can apply what you learn, but you also start to realize that makes the training itself more interesting. It's not just about this one thing. Let's face it, where I live and what I do, a lot of the guys in my classes, if they've ever been in a fight, it was like in the 3rd grade. A lot of these guys aren't in fights, they're not cops, but yet I do have those. I have cops, I have guys recently out of the military, I have guys that work in rough hospitals with violent people, and those guys need those skills specific to that. But how about other guys that are in really tough jobs and they have to manage a lot of people, and these people get stressed out, they can at least get very verbally violent, that threatens the guys in the workplace. Yet these skills of breathing and calming down in conflict, they can apply that in non-physical combat situations. So, and something you mentioned earlier, what happens is people that are doing this kind of training go, well, okay, let's see, benefits. My blood pressure's gone down. I've lost weight. When I get worked up now, instead of getting all tight and tense and pissed off, I start breathing and I physically start to loosen my body up. The tension goes away. I'm focused and I'm calm, and my health is better. Oh, and how about the fact that when I come and see all these guys, this is my tribe. These are my comrades. These are my pals. You know, I'm comfortable enough because we put each other in, still in enough hairy situations at times, testing each other physically and psychologically, that it's a brotherhood that develops, right? We're helping each other just be better people, period. It's not just better at combative skills, but better people. And you know, when you're trusting these guys, they're your training partners, and we get in some very uncomfortable situations. Some guys get really freaked out at times, and you know, you've seen this stuff. But when you develop a bond, these are your boys. Here again, it's your tribe, right? These are the guys that you can experiment with things that you wouldn't be comfortable experimenting with most other people, you know, because your personality comes out, your character comes out when you put guys under a lot of pressure, you know. I mean, sometimes we'll just slam a guy up against a wall, get in his face, nose to nose, and just cuss him out. Call him every vile thing you can, you know, and can you handle that? Because the emotions come out.
That's that terminology for that is stress inoculation. And the thing is that you're talking about, and I'm here sitting here listening to you and agreeing with, and what I'm trying to do also. I mean, it automatically happens with the military guys that I train, especially I train from basic guys all the way up, you know, special forces, special teams guys. As you go up the ladder, the camaraderie is higher, tighter. The people rely on each other because they're proven, and that's the thing. And we're trying to really create a warrior tribe, and the mentality of the tribe is applicable to many other things because, like you're saying, conflict is part of life. It's never going away. It's part of the human condition. You have conflict with women, for example. You know, you're going to have conflict at buying something, and or the service is bad. And of course, that changes around the world because conflict is different. Because I live in different cultures, it's very different. But the factor that you're never going to get away with is conflict. Conflict can exist no matter where you live, unless you're living in the middle of, well, even if you live in the wilderness, you're going to have conflict with nature, conflict to survive. But when you were talking about that crawling, the thing that came to my mind right then was a house fire. You know, that's very applicable to getting out of a house fire because you need to stay underneath the smoke, number one. And these are skills that may look on the surface. That's why we train adults, you know, because adolescents and younger kids don't get what we're doing. I mean, they don't get that connection that this is a drill, but this drill applies to other parts of life. And yes, I train specifically for people in horrible, violent conditions, countering violence, or actually war situations, and I have to, and I do provide immediate answers to that. I ran a camp with John Saylor in Ohio for normal peoples, and they in 10 hours they could do what they couldn't do before, and they can beat the hell out of other people. But what they're also seeing is what this has done. A couple guys there were really good, and they got the mindset change, you know, and this is like, man, I see clearly now, you know, and this is, I remember Mike Sandlin telling me, you know, when you get this, when you're doing this and you can actually have to go through these drills, that you become clearer. Your mentality is straight, it's focused, you know, and I think that's what you're doing too, you know. Your stuff is all on creating stronger focus, creating and showing the integrity of the people, because the people that stay with you a long time have integrity, obviously, you know, and they're dependable people. And you know, I mean, like we could talk about Norm. I mean, Norm, you know, I can see, I don't know Norm very well. I mean, you know, I still kick him in the nuts, but you know, and that guy, I know I can rely on him. You know what I mean? I know it because I know the personality. I know that type of person. Do you know what I mean? That's a guy I know is not going to run off in the face of danger. You know, he's not going to do it. And that's what you, when you're tribe, you know that, you know they're going to be there for you, and that you'll be there for them. And the whole point of this is to create not just as you're doing all sorts of different drills that are really, you're trying to work on the entire person, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're now focused on a lot of stuff. I mean, you know, your focus isn't, you know, specifically one area now. It's diffused into this, you know, and it sounds sort of like what in the 60s, you know, I mean, when people were like, you know, expand my consciousness, or I want to find myself. But that may be weird to people, but that's really where I mean, what you're doing, isn't it? I mean, you're really,
yeah.
You know,
I mean, how to handle yourself in extremely stressful, life-threatening situations, to me, is all about one thing. It's one word. It's fear. Okay. And this kind of training, as you know, is a crucible for being able to train yourself on how to deal with fear. Now, fear is fear. It doesn't matter whether it's the extreme version where, you know, a guy walks around a corner, all of a sudden he's got a ranger chokehold on your throat and he's got a knife up to your carotid artery. Okay, that's the extreme version, all right? But you can use that extreme version, and as you work with people, you can tap into all these other, let's just call them sub-fears for now, you know? Fear of losing my girlfriend, fear of losing my job, fear that I'll get sick and die of 14 different kinds of cancer, fear, 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 fear. But as you know so well, and anybody who realizes that military training works, the mind does not know the difference between simulation and reality. If it didn't, I mean, if that weren't the case, military training wouldn't work at all. You just hand guys guns and tell them to go hope for the best. But the training works, right? The mind doesn't really know the difference between simulation and reality. When you push all the right buttons and the adrenaline's going and the nervous system's amped up and you're in the flow of it, it's the same thing. You know, you're still afraid, you know, okay, that nice blunt aluminum, but it still hurts. Your body's still reacting in similar ways, except for maybe the blood loss, et cetera. But, you know, it is training you, right? And what you train is what you do. I've put people under that test enough times, including myself. And you put enough pressure on a guy and bam, all of a sudden you're in that state of reality and the guy's fighting for his life. And then, you know, you take that to lesser situations and it's easy to apply the lessons learned from there on how to control yourself. It's about controlling your emotions, right? You got to control your heart rate, and you got to keep your blood pressure down. You're going to gas out real fast if you get real tensed up all the time, every time you get afraid. And so that whole nutshell right there, and you can take it so many ways from so many angles, is what keeps people coming back ultimately, especially the guys that aren't just doing this because they work with violent people in a prison or in a hospital, or they're cops, or, you know, I got a bunch of those guys too. But all the other guys that aren't that way, they're getting just as much out of it. They're just applying it in different ways, you know. Plus the other thing you said, this is your buddies, this is your network, right? I went out and bought about or got for free about $2,500 worth of firewood. All right. And man, it would take me 2 years to transport, split all that firewood from my stove. And, you know, and I had this gang of guys, right? You know, I mean, you got these buddies. Oh, we got to do what? Okay. Next thing you know, everybody's at that guy's house helping him out. And if some kind of shit hit the fan, and we had all the riots and stuff going on here a couple weeks ago. We had some big nasty stuff going on. Things, right? Well, if one of these guys called and said, hey, there's a bunch of shitheads out here blocking my driveway, and my wife's sick and I got to get her to the hospital when my house is surrounded, well, the cops would be on the way, and so would all of us. Yeah, there'd be a small army there to get this guy out of his house. So, you know, you got that.
And you know, and like we should not play that down. I mean, we really should play that down, because the environment in the United States is very volatile right now. And the thing is, you're never going to get away from violence. Violence is used by governments, by warlords, by everybody. Violence is not going away. All anybody ever tries to do is lie to you that violence isn't going to be imposed. But guess what? When they say you can't be violent, how do they control those people not to be violent? With violence. So it's, you know, it's a lie. and you can't get away from it. So you need to actually be prepared for that. But I want to get back to something that you said, because this is something maybe some of our listeners don't know about, and that's the fact that imagination is no different than reality to your brain. If, like you said, if it hits enough of the senses, and that's one of the things that they deal with in research for virtual reality, what will give us, you know, the sense of actually being in the situation. And since we're so visual, it has a lot to do with vision. You know, I mean, you know, like movies can do that at some point, but when you add other things with the movies, you add movement, you feel movement through the ground and stuff like that. But what I was going to say was, most people, when they're older, who die in the early morning because they have a heart attack. Why do they have a heart attack then? That's when they're having these lucid dreams. The dream kills you. You know, they have a dream that you might have had when you were 20 years old, and you wake up and you're sweating and you're shaking because it was a scary, fearful dream. Well, when you're 80, you can't take that anymore. You know, I mean, your heart rate can't hit 200. You die. You know what I mean?
I call that embedded fear. We're back to this thing of this training releases fear. It teaches you how to face fear, because folks want to block it off, right? But when you go into it and you learn how to deal with it and you learn how to work through it, you know, this is something that I learned when I went through a lot of training as a body worker, you know, to work on the bodies, massage work, okay, years back. I had an experience that led me to graduate school, and the experience was I would be working on people that had a lot of tension, right? And I'm working on a muscle group. Let's just say for now I'm working on their traps, because this used to happen a lot with guys. And you're working, and there's all this tense tissue, right? And you're working, and all of a sudden you get this big release. Oh, you feel the muscle let go. Guess what else lets go? Emotional energy. I've had guys on the table cry like a baby. What used to happen to me, for some reason, when this would happen to me, is I would laugh hysterically, which you're laughing and crying, and then the guy working on you is laughing and crying because you're making him laugh, and what that tells you is fear, embedded fear, emotional energy, fear. It is in the body work field, they call it the issues are in the tissues. If you've ever heard that one. Okay. Emotional.
I mean, this is the whole premise of Rolfing.
It's energy, man. Yeah, Rolfing, right. That's a deep version of going real deep in the physical tissue to release tension. So you're storing all this emotional energy, and this is all tied into fears, right? So you're walking around holding this shit in your body your whole life, right? So you look up, and I'm sure you've seen this over the years. You look at a lot of old martial artists, right? Some of them are all crippled up because they're just busted up because they've, you know, been in too much combat or whatever. But then you see some, and it's like, ooh. And I like to see myself this way, because this is what it said to me. It's like, you're 63? God, Jay said this to me. We fooled around in my basement right after the last talk with Jay, and he goes, shit, Kenny, you move like you're 18 years old. Holy crap. He hadn't seen me move in years, you know? And that's the point, right? Releasing, 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 releasing. I'm letting stuff go. The more I let stuff go, not only am I more free in my life to handle situations and to make it tougher for people to get to me, but I'm actually releasing pressure on my vascular system because I don't walk around tensed up all day, you know? I had a doctor that was on a mission to find something wrong with me because I hadn't had a physical in so long. That guy was so pissed off that there was nothing wrong with me that he almost wanted to try to create something. I was laughing my ass off at this guy. But here we go. Just a little bit of a long-winded example of all the good stuff that this stuff is doing for you. The psychological and emotional lead to the physical. The physical takes it the other way too. And you have more control over all that than you can possibly imagine if you train right.
Well, you know, and it kind of leads us down some other paths that other people used to do. And we're not talking about the direct application of warfare right now. We're kind of going down what the people did, looking to India for the yogis, you know, and yoga, that type of yoga that we're talking about right now is not the stuff that you see the millennials doing on mats. That's not the type of yoga we're talking about. The yoga at the other level is exactly what you just explained. This relief, It's this trying to attune yourself to the lowest possible friction with nature, I guess, or friction with the society, Now you can't abate it. You can't get rid of it because it's going to be there. I mean, the friction is going to be there, but you can try to minimize the damage it causes to you, like you just said, because you're exactly 100% correct as usual on this stuff, and it has repercussions, and years of it on you changes you, just like wind blowing a tree will bend a tree. This stuff's going to bend you, twist you inside, It's not the only thing, but it's not the only thing that's going to pressure you like that. But the thing is that with trying to create or find like-minded people who see that we can be actually very pragmatic, give them real skills for combat, which other people cannot do, but we can give them also real skills that can transfer to other parts of life. Now, we're not trying to promote ourselves as business consultants or something, but I had people that I trained who were medical doctors who went back and said, I can deal with administration much better now because of the training I've been through, because my thoughts are clear and I understand what they're trying to do to me. I mean, they saw the agenda, or they felt the agenda immediately. They weren't falling for the namby-pamby, couching, patronizing, build you up speeches that these people are taught to do because they go to classes to learn how to manipulate people, and they weren't falling for it anymore. And that's what we're trying to say here, is that there's a lot to this that applies to other aspects of your life. The only thing that I could say that hasn't happened with you is that you just haven't gotten rid of the jazz. And that you're musically
Hey, you remember the really famous philosopher from the I guess the 70s is when he became well known? World famous philosopher, guy named Bootsy Collins. You know who I mean?
Yeah.
Bootsy's Rubber Band.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, Bootsy Collins. Okay, here's why I say he was the world's greatest philosopher. Because of one statement. Bootsy would say, free your mind and your ass will follow. Okay, so that applies to music too. Nothing wrong with good, solid, basic beat music, but at the same time, you have to use different parts of your brain to go into things that are, shall we say, maybe a little more complexly layered at times. So I'll put it that way.
But I think a psychotic would tell you the same thing. You know what I'm saying? A psychotic would tell you the same thing about his thought patterns. They're more complex. But anyway, but what I want
jazz, you just gave me a new idea.
But what I wanted to ask you though too, during this 3 months that we haven't talked, we almost had a rendezvous, but things didn't work out.
Yeah, too bad that didn't happen.
Yeah, that would have been because I really
Norm was going to kick you in the nuts.
I didn't know he was going to try to Pearl Harbor me. You know what I mean? I would have got him long before that. But I had a lot of I'm not going to give away my secrets though.
Well, he's old and decrepit anyway, so.
Anyway,
so that when he watches this, he'll kick me in the nuts.
Okay. But because I wanted to talk to Jay too. I mean, did it fire Jay up a little bit?
Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, a couple of times, I guess 3 times I've talked to Jay since then, I believe. And one of them was funny because it was probably just about a month ago, and I happened to be on the same highway he was on, headed the opposite direction. We didn't even see each other. But he just happened to call me and he goes, where are you? I said, well, I'm on 170 headed towards St. Peter's. He goes, well, I'm coming from home in St. Peter's headed your way. He wanted to get together and talk some more. And he actually wanted to get together and do a little training together and play around and stuff, which is great. We haven't done that in decades, So yeah, he got him fired up, and he said that was so cool that you guys did that. And
we'll do it again. We'll do it again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's into it. He wants to do it.
He's a real. I mean, he's I would say a well source of information, number one, but he's a real part of of history in the United States for reality-based martial arts.
He opened it up, man, in this area. He's the guy, the sole guy who really opened the doors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not just there. I mean, you know, he was responsible for its screening. So, yeah, I mean, we got to get him back. You know, we got to get Norm back too. And but the thing is, what I was going to say about that, my thing was like that's part of being the tribe, isn't it? Like sometimes you may not be all on the high energy thing, but then one of the guys calls you or comes sees you, and he's like on the high energy vibe, and it just kind of boom. You know what I mean? It's kind of a synergistic thing, or it's kind of spark that lights the fire, isn't it? And it's like that's a great I love that sort of thing. You know what I mean? I used to have people like that. One of my guys, one of my instructors, Lance Horseman, he and we would just, because we did a lot of research on Native American Indian warfare and stuff, and we would just boom, you know what I mean? It was just I would try out new technologies and stuff with him. I developed a whole lot of stuff with him, and man, it was just, you know what I mean? It's a great vibe. I mean, vibe's the word I've used for 20 years. You know, vibe's the thing. You know, I mean, that's it. You get a good vibe going on, and that's there's a vibe in the tribe, right? You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, human beings are energy generators. We put a lot of energy out. You know, who doesn't know the feeling? You walk into a room and you're having a meeting with a boss or just a group of associates or whatever, and one guy's really negative, and it's like it brings the whole room down. And that's just an extreme example of, you know. So what happens is, what I hear all the time, especially our night classes, the guys show up, everybody's dragging their ass in, they're all I had a shitty day at work today, oh god, and they're all like, most of them are all growling and stuff. And so a lot of times the first thing I do is I get them, their butts on the ground, and I just make them start crawling. And it starts taking the tension out, because they're starting to sweat like pigs. And next thing you know, I got guys sitting up in the 4-point position, and guys are jumping over them and flipping over them and rolling over them, and then starting to turn it into playing the catch drill, hooking the guy's leg. Before you know it, there's 8 guys on the ground wrestling around like a bunch of bear cubs. Then the knives come out, we're fighting on the ground while we're wrestling. I mean, it just goes nuts. And all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, does everybody feel better now? And then I'll look around, and you check the energy, right? It's like, okay, we've released the tension, but they're all tired. So I'll do some progressive muscle relaxation and a bunch of energizing breathing stuff. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, wow, I feel like $1 million. Let's really train now. And that's how it goes a lot of times, you know. You change the energy, right?
Well, you know what I do? I throw ice water on their asses. That'll change their state. You know what I mean? They walk in, they don't know what to expect, you know. I mean, I use padded bats a lot in my training, you know, and the guys that I've had for a long period of time, they knew to never let their guard down. You know what I mean? And that's part of serious training. Like if they were around me, they could be getting hit with a stick, you know? And so if they walked into thing, you know, I might be, you know, it's like we were talking about before. John Saylor and I do this all the time. It's the Cato and Clouseau thing, you know, which actually was done in World War II. I mean, it's done other times, but I have exact factual evidence of it being done in some of the training for the World War II elite forces, the Marine Raiders and the Alamo Scouts. They would do the same thing that I'm talking about. You know, like you could be attacked at any time, so you prepared any time, and that's what we're talking about. Basically, you're trying to prepare people for life. I mean, that sounds like a ad slogan, but it's really
the unexpected anything. Yeah, I like to throw tennis balls at people sometimes. You know, they're over there, and a couple of guys start talking too much, and it's like, oh, what's that? Oh, you're really aware. I have a handout that I usually give people in the beginning when they start coming to classes, and I let them know that, you know, this is awareness training. So you never know what's going to happen. I used to be more extreme about what I would do to them in those situations. I'm a little nicer now, but
you know what you can do? You can use frozen marshmallows, you know, in a slingshot. That's
just hitting them with anything, and it's like, what? And it's like, oh shit, I wasn't paying attention. It's like, well, you know, here's my favorite one. These things, right? The smartphones, right? I watch idiots all day long. I go, man, I should become a thief. It's so easy now because every damn fool is walking around on the street looking at this thing, going like paying attention to nothing, and they're so freaking vulnerable. Well, that's how they get their cell phone stolen. It happens all the time.
Well, that's how you get bugged, and that's how you get stabbed.
Yeah.
And this is something we're touching. I mean, we've been giving out good nuggets here of information, but this is some serious stuff here.
Yeah,
this is how people now are, because they're so self-absorbed and so narcissistic that they don't think about anything except themselves, and when they're engrossed in this phone, they are 100% vulnerable to anything.
You bet.
I mean, you can look on videos where that woman walked into an open manhole, you know what I mean? Because she was looking at the phone and fell down into the manhole. In nature, you're dead. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is the end of you. And
picture you're a snake and you're on your cell phone and there's a hawk above you.
Yeah. Well, here's something. I mean, here's something that I have to tell a lot of people at a lot of different trainings that I do. And it's like, in nature or in reality, if you have a mobility problem, be that you twist your ankle or worse, you break your leg, you were dead. And you still are. Like if you were trying to live out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, those guys are very conscious of wearing very good footwear, boots, having hiking sticks, and looking where they're walking. Because if they break their leg, they are dead. They are dead. Like people nowadays, because they're lard asses, they don't walk anywhere in the United States. They don't walk anywhere anymore. And they don't have to do things that involve movement and walking. They don't realize that they are dead in reality. If you don't have other people that you could depend on, you don't have cars, you don't have ambulances, you don't have wheelchairs, you're dead.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I've had guys ask me, when I used to do this more frequently, they go, why in the hell do you go on a canoe trip, a camping canoe trip in the Ozarks in January and February? I go, because it's dangerous as hell and it really amps up my awareness. I have to be so freaking careful of every move I make. It's nothing in July. You roll a canoe over in the water, big freaking deal, right? Do it in January. You'll be dead fast. Hypothermia, man, you better know what to do fast and you better get warm quick, and they're like, oh, that's pretty extreme. And I go, well, it's just about amping up my awareness and reminding myself I have to be able to rely on myself and be careful of every environment I'm in. And they go, isn't that paranoid? I go, no. I said, you can turn it into fun. It's really fun because you'll start seeing things that nobody around you is noticing. And when you go on a nature hike or you go to the freaking zoo or you go to hear and see a band, your senses are higher. You'll see, feel, and hear things that other people miss because of this training.
Yeah, well, we kind of sound like we're doing, the Daredevil when he met his Stick. The guy's name was Stick. I always liked Daredevil. I've got a lot of the original comics from the 60s, and then when Frank Miller took over, which really messed up his life. I mean, Frank Miller, the writer, did, and that whole thing we're talking about is basically what he went through. You know what I mean? Like he's talking about you're trying to bring your awareness up, and when you bring your awareness up, then the less dangerous life is easy to lead. That's what you're getting,
and more enjoyable just because of all the extra stuff you're taking in. It's 10 times more enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, this is. I don't know if you've ever thought about. Have you thought about taking the people, your guys, like having a whatever you want to call it, a camp or what,
Yeah, I've done it in the past. Yeah, I've done it in the past. I did that more frequently when I was doing FMA.
Oh yeah.
Because there was a lot of focus on a lot of the environmental training, like fighting in waist deep water and on slippery rocks, and a lot of that stuff came out of the Kiki Tertia, and it's good training. It's a lot of fun too. Sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Survival work, with it too, and developing some of those skills, At one point, if the timing would have been better, I would have probably been Tom Brown Jr.'s top student. Are you hip to Tom Brown Jr.? Do you know about him?
No, I don't know.
Look at a book. His first book was called The Tracker. Check out this guy. This guy used to be interviewed a lot on the radio years back, and this guy was the top level wilderness survival guy that anybody's ever seen. He was trained by an old Apache Indian in all the old ways of survival. When he was 18, he was sent out into the Pine Barrens wilderness area in New Jersey, naked. Came back by himself, came back a year later, clothed in buckskins and put on some weight. That was his first big survival test when he was 18 years old. He repeated that same test in other climates and other environments. He's got a series of books, but The Tracker kicks it off. I highly recommend that to anybody interested in this subject.
Yeah,
a lot of high-level military people over the years thought they had the top survival.
There's a lot. Yeah, if you get into that, I mean, that goes down. There's a lot of things we can talk about with that. But what I was going to say when you were talking about that was like, you know, in the Philippines, I trained in the ocean. That was one of the things I had to do, you know, and all of that is. I like to think of it as not specific but supplemental. You know what I mean? Like that's supplemental stuff, and it's good. Like that water training. We did water training at the Combat Judo Alpha camp. Actually, we didn't do it at the degree that you were talking about here, but we still did it, you know. And the thing is, it's good to. Oh man, I don't want to get into this subject too much, but you need to be able to apply your skills in every environment. And
that's the idea. Yeah.
And the problem is, people are training for the ring, you know, or they're training for the dojo when they're going to most places. They're exactly training for that because number one, like I've said a million times, I'm trying to get through people's head. They're taking their shoes off. You know what I mean? That's, you know, you're not taking. That's not what's going to happen to you in a real fight. You're not taking your shoes off and you're not putting gloves on. But people are training for these environments. These guys who do MMA, you know, they're training for one environment that's very artificial. And what we're almost talking about here is, man, because we do this, is environmental training and actually going and having the training in those exact environments, which happens in the military. And I'm contemplating we're going to do that now with this combat judo future camps. We did train outside for the Alpha camp, completely outside, but there's some things coming up. I don't want to get into it right now, but my thing saying is that your experience at doing that is so much more, well, number one, realistic, and so much more expansive than training in a gym, you know? And this is something like I'm not saying a mountain, but even a large hill. Getting up to the top of the large hill and training is a huge difference than going to a gym.
Sure. Yeah, that's like just today, early this morning, you know, we train outside a lot. It's different, man. It's different when you're falling on bumpy ground and there's big ass tree roots hanging out all over the place and your spine lands on that when you take a dive on the ground, and you know, there's tree limbs and shit all over the place and you're rolling around in that stuff, and everybody's like, ooh, it's a very different environment. I go, yeah, it's another tweaking of your awareness, you know.
It's number one is the footwork is you can't play around with that footwork you get away with in the gym.
That's right. No, you got to be very wary of what you're doing, and you know, it's the old thing. People realize, ooh, man, if I stepped on that root that's sticking up wrong and twist my ankle, I'd be dead. And I go, exactly.
Yep.
You know, so you know, all those things come up, and you know, it's all amping awareness. It's all making people more mindful of every darn thing they're doing, right? I mean, yeah, that's.
So what? Okay, so just to kind of say some other aspects of things I wanted to cover. What have you done in the 3 months that we haven't talked? I mean, have you had any big changes in your curriculum or anything, or?
I guess I would just say that I tend to take things sometimes in blocks. You know, like in other words, one point last year, for 18 weeks, all we did is groundwork. You know, groundwork means, you know, regular ground grappling. Groundwork means 3-on-1 on the ground. Groundwork means 3, 4, and 5 on one, and they have knives, and the one guy doesn't. You know, and so for a while, or sometimes just for 6 weeks, all we would do is a lot of work on striking. But we strike with everything from our head to our feet, like you guys do. You know, we strike with shoulders, we strike with our chests, we strike with our hip. You know, and I'll do these little modules, and a lot of times that's how I do my workshop formats. These little modules like that, where we're say just focused on blindfold training. You put the blindfold on the minute you hit the mat, and you don't take it off until you're done. That means even if you take a piss, you got to go wear your blindfold. But everything you do, you're blindfolded. And man, it's like, ooh, you know, I'm sure you've done it. I mean, that changes everything, you know. And there's even some team stuff that you do blindfolded that's pretty interesting, so that you learn how to work with another person and combine your senses to make yourself a little bit more of a solid unit and work through obstacles. And it's fun. People, it's like little kid stuff in a way, but it's not, because you know, you're learning how to work with let's say an injury, you know, you can't see for some reason, you know, so things like that. I like to do a lot of situational stuff. There's been a lot more focus lately I've done with blunt weapon work too. Than I had gotten away from that. I did that for so many years, but I'm working with different lengths of levers and taking a lever and turning it into different lengths. In other words, like today, what we've been doing for weeks on Saturdays is working with a short staff, right? Well, you know, most people work with a short staff for one thing. They always work with 2 hands. Well, yeah. we do single hands. We work from the center. You even learn how to grasp it in such a way that you're working with it like it's almost a kubatan at very close quarters. And you're working, you're bouncing it off the ground and striking with it. And then you're flipping it over. And versatility with a lever in your hand, right? That's been my core focus on Saturdays now. In fact, we just finished up on that focus on that for a while, you know, so. Now I put the elements back in. Huh?
You remember the Yawara stick? Remember when the Yawara?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Was the thing, you know? So, well, you know what it really is? It's what you're doing is replicating what the London Masters of Defense did, which was to become a master at arms. What the term means was that you had mastered several different arms. And that pike, the different types of swords, the axe, the staff, all these things, and you had to use them in different tests. Like one of them was you had to spar, you want to call it blood swords, but against drunk guys, because they would give you wild, erratic, unpredictable patterns, you know, and you had to test them. But the thing, the point what I'm getting to with the master at arms meant that if you had anything available, you could use it, and that's really where you're going with this. You know, I mean, that's what you're saying right there. It's like an improvised weapon. You got to be able to use it.
Yeah, that's why I like credit cards, baseball caps, rolled up magazines, light jackets, heavy jackets. You know, all of it. Shoes. There's a lot of improvised weapons people have on their body. They don't think about using all that stuff as a weapon.
Yeah, magazines. If you get the right magazines, man, those things, make them. They're harder than hell. You know, I mean,
those little collapsible umbrellas are pretty decent.
Oh, they actually make you know, tactical umbrellas now that you can stand on. It won't break them. You know, so they can whack people with them and get that. There's a lot, and I'm actually getting into one of the things you know, because that kind of fits into the military stuff that I have to do is body armor. You know, body armor is getting to be very light, and
I've seen some of your stuff on that. Yeah,
it's just expensive as hell. That's all. You know what I mean? It's expensive, and there's stab-proof stuff. I mean, you can buy slash-proof things that you should be wearing, you know, that are cheap. They can't take a stab, but they can take a slash. I mean, and you definitely, why wouldn't you be wearing this stuff and you're in a plate, you know? And the same thing, there's gloves like that. The people who use these are like people who work on the line for beef factories and fisheries and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because they don't want to cut their hands off. So they've, you know, all these things developed now. And I really think, you know, I mean, like, okay, for example, here's something, you know, that we normally don't talk about, but Aikido, okay, not really applicable to things, but Aikido originally was meant for samurais to try to get the sword out of the other guy's arm, because they were dealing with swords. I mean, or they were going to get hit with a stick, because people weren't attacking them without a weapon. And the weapon at the time was a sword or a stick at the least, And so stuff that those movements are for a sword. They don't apply to unarmed combat very well at all, but that was what that was for. Nowadays, I mean, John Wick, when in the movies he's doing, basically what he's doing is with the gun, which makes it's completely realistic. It makes sense because he wants to shoot people, and he's just doing whatever he can do to hang on to the gun or get the gun. It's not about like the Jason Bourne movies where he's shooting or he's fighting. No, he wants to shoot you at all times. And like the only reason he's doing hand-to-hand stuff is to get the gun or keep the gun. And in that same aspect, what I'm saying is now with this armor that you can wear that really doesn't look like armor, you should be trained in that too. If you're very serious about surviving these attacks that happen all over the place, especially. I mean, we could do a whole thing. We should maybe do a whole talk sometime just about dealing with machetes. You know what I mean? Like these guys coming out of left field because they're going to give you a number one. I mean, that's all. When we're talking about Eagles, it's all going to be number one. If it's a baseball bat, a crowbar, it's all going to be number one. If the guy's trying to kill you, it's not going to be any of this other stupid. It's not going to be any of this FMA crap. It's going to be just angle one. Angle one, and then angle two if they miss with the one. You know what I mean? But that's
they're left-handed. Left-handed runs the two.
It's the one on the left-hand side then too. Whatever. I mean, But I mean, that's the thing that people they're not looking at. I mean, the thing is, you should look at how you're going to really. We're kind of getting back into combat here, but. You should be really looking at what's going to happen to you. Like, how do people attack you? And then you should be training for that. And what we're talking about is being aware of that. I mean, and I'm talking specifically now, but that awareness, if you're in your cell phone, your smartphone, it doesn't matter. You're done, because if the guy stabs you or hacks you with a machete, then you're done, and none of this training works if you're not aware. None of it works, and you have to be prepared. You have to tell yourself what you're going to use, and you have to be trained in it. You have to be trained, just like, let's go to music. Like, you can't just suddenly start playing in the key of D if you haven't done the key of D, unless you're this rare prodigy who can just has absolute pitch or something, and that's like whatever 1 in 5 million people or something. I don't know. It's maybe higher than that. The thing is, you can't count on that. You need to learn the frequency of the events, and you need to learn how to handle that. And that goes back to what we're talking about, being aware and putting yourself, the thing is, like having this tribe thing, the more that you're around people who are aware, the more aware you become. It's really it's a culture. It's really a culture, right? I mean, a little culture of, I mean, the same thing with the Indians. Like when they used to talk about, Native American Indians, they would say like whatever, the Comanche or whatever, the entire tribe, the women, the children, the old people, they were all able to move faster than the cavalry was. They could take up roots, take down the teepees or whatever, and move faster than the cavalry could. And they could also hide better than the cavalry could. Why? Because they have a culture of that training, So
yeah, sure. So I guess the whole idea was just to define. I think the whole idea of the training, because in the past we were talking about just really the combative aspects for the most part, and here we are talking about let's just say, I hate to use the word ancillary, but let's just say ancillary benefits or additional benefits that go way above and beyond the training. So, because you look at people, what they do for exercise, They get bored shitless. They're sitting in the gym. If all they're doing is lifting weights to be lifting weights and it has no other application, anything else, you know, it's one thing if you're doing it because it's a guy like you who professionally is out there with a lot of strong guys, and you gotta be strong at that level. Okay, so maybe you train weights, but you know, the Joe average who goes and does weights for some exercise gets bored. That's why these gyms sell 1 million memberships right after Christmas when everybody's extra fat, and the guys come for 2 months and then they don't come back anymore. You know, and so then the next thing they do is volleyball for 2 months, and the next thing they dabble in a whole bunch of stuff because it's solo activity. It doesn't connect them. They're not dependent on other people for their training like we are. How are we going to do 5-on-1 knife training if I don't have 4 or 5 other guys? So, you know, it's the training is dependent on other people. And so you develop the camaraderie, you know.
Yeah, the thing is, you just hit a topic that's really, you know, deep, because for one thing, fitness has been fad driven. You know, people go, there's fads. It's like there was Taibo. Remember Taibo? You know?
God.
Yeah, Taibo, there's Zumba, there's, you know, now it's CrossFit, right? And CrossFit had to come up with CrossFit Games to keep people interested in doing CrossFit, which is not that healthy, but that's for another time. But there are people, it has to be a lifestyle. It can't be a fad, it has to be a lifestyle. And I have a friend who's a professional, you know, bodybuilder. He's an enormous guy. And he's got a willpower like you wouldn't believe. You know what I mean? I mean, he leads, I call him the Iron Monk, you know, because he gets up at this, you know, and he eats 6 times a day or 5, you know, and it's prepared meals that he's got, and it's very, he doesn't wander from that. He's at the gym, he trains people, you know, and everything, he's focused, you know what I'm saying? He's very focused on that. Not everybody can do that. They don't have that capacity.
Sure.
But what I'm saying, you gotta connect the fitness to something beyond just the idea of it, you know?
Right. Yeah. So when it becomes a social event as well, right? Because you're seeing your buds, and then you know what happens. There's cross connections that happen there. Like I always tell my guys, I go, you're not serious if you guys don't take what we do in class. Break off into your own little groups and go off and train this stuff, because we're not getting enough hours. This isn't like the Stan and Ken days when Stan and Ken were doing this 5 days a week. You know, we were training all the time. We still did solo workouts on top of that, right? So I said, this is what it takes to own any of this stuff. You got to go off and with your buddies, and you got to do. And a lot of my guys do that. You know, the most serious ones do. Then what happens? It's like, oh, well, these 2 guys are IT guys. I got a couple of guys that are high-level engineers working on military aircraft, and you know, then all these people have all these different skills and all these different things, and before you know it, they're helping each other out at their houses and at my house, and you know, there's all these other great things that come out of the tribe, right? Above and beyond anything to do with the fighting part, you know.
Yeah, well, I was just going to comment on that one aspect there about you got people doing things, but they don't understand. A lot of times they don't understand that your base is enormous because you put in thousands of hours that they don't know about. You know what I'm saying? Right. I mean, you put in that at least the whole 80s decade. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's what you did for the 80s. You know, I mean, you transpose that to whatever the 90s for them, or the 2000s. What did they do all during the 90s or the 2000s? They didn't do what you've done. So you're at a different place than they are. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're at a totally different spot than they are. It's because you have that base, and you know what you need specifically. You know what to hone in on. They're below that. I mean, they still have to do those other things that you used to do that you don't do anymore. You know, it's the same thing with me. Like, I don't do all this, what we would call general training, because I did it, you know, a long time ago. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? My stuff's very specific now, specific to just what I do, which is real combat. And I don't vary from that, because number one, I don't have the energy to do all that other stuff, you know? And I don't have to do all those things you did for sport fighting. I don't have to do that. I just have to be concentrated, focused on this. But you can't just come into this and start doing that. You have to do those other things. You have to do it. You have to go through all that, like all those, I don't know, you do balance drills and training and stuff like that. You know, I mean, that stuff has to be there. The blindfold stuff, for example, you know, I mean, you don't get somewhere without doing it. You have to pay your dues, is what I'm trying to get to. You know, you have to pay your dues. And the tribe, when you have the tribe, they realize that. You know what I mean? Because the guys that are, let's use Braves, you know, the veteran Braves understand, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
And they're egging each other on, and they're supporting each other. And, you know, you start realizing, man, you got to cherish your training partners. Without them, you don't have squat. You can't do all this by yourself.
Yeah.
How are you going to develop timing in the air with nothing ever coming at you? You know, I mean, no pressure on your body. You know, you got to have training partners.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, but yeah, unless you want to do some sort of, you know, crazy like kung fu theater thing where you try to, you know, walk through a airplane propeller or something because you know, jump over the blades or some crap. You know what I'm saying?
You can do some stuff on your own. That's true. But yeah, there's a lot of things.
There are actually, because the gladiator schools had some. You can see it. Spartacus had the thing where it spins around. He had to jump over it and then duck, and you know what I mean. This is
Hey, you know, that's the old Kali drill, right? You take a long staff and you hang it in the middle from a tree limb. I used to do this all the time. And then you go at it with 1 or 2 sticks, and that thing's swinging around. It's coming at you, and it's pretty unpredictable too. A lot, you know, when you're moving, umbrella moves, and because that thing's coming at you like crazy. I mean, you can create things. You know, you had that gizmo, that little thing that you did that you were showing in your bag and stuff this summer, and that's all cool stuff because not everybody has access to other people, or they have times when they don't, and that keeps you going. At least you're still doing stuff. You know, it's just it's not as much fun either as when it's with guys. You know.
Well, yeah, it's cool, and but I gotta say, regardless of all that, I'm still gonna kick Norm in the nuts. You know.
He said to tell you, yeah, be careful because he's wearing his iron knees. He's got these iron knee pads now. So.
Really? But, yeah.
That's what he said. He's just talking crap.
Yeah. I like to. Yeah. Well, tell him to bring it on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, let's see your iron knees.
Yeah, tell him to get some WD-40 on those things.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get him to slim down a little more. You know.
Oh, yeah? What's he weighing? What's he weighing nowadays? What's he weighing?
Oh God, I don't know what his exact weight is. I'm thinking of maybe he might be 240.
Really?
Around there. Yeah. I know he's come down. You know, since he got back with doing stuff with us, quite a bit. But I see where there's
room.
Holding him back. It's holding him back a little bit.
Yeah.
Core work, mobility in the core. You know.
It does. You know, it does. It absolutely does. And yeah, that's the thing about movement. You know what I mean? That's all. I was. You know, I thought that for a moment there we're going to go down that awareness through movement, Feldenkrais avenue, which is very important. You know, and
guess what? I still use some old Feldenkrais stuff in my class toward the end. When we're just doing joint mobility and you know, flexibility work, I still have stuff I learned back in years of doing yoga. I had a gal who was a yoga instructor who had gotten certified in the Feldenkrais thing way before the yoga craze. Yeah. You know, and you know, sure, you gotta have mobility. You know, you see the old folks. I always say, here's what defines a lot of older folks. You see them walking around, they're all hunched over, all their joints are locked up. What happens when your joints are locked up? Not only does it hurt, but you have inflammation, arthritis. Inflammation goes systemic, and that triggers cancer. Triggers a lot of diseases. So the last thing you want you to do is your joints locking up on you and getting all immobile, because immobility kicks off a lot of other things that create disease, you know, creates the environment for disease. Let's put it that way. And I say, man, that's what you don't want. Don't, you got to move. You got to stay loose and moving.
Yeah. In fact, I know people who were athletes in a lot of different areas, like even bicycling and stuff, and they'd had problems, and they realized, like, even Gene LaBelle told me that he thought that people should be doing it, you know, and he meant exactly the reason you're talking about, you know, because of mobility. He was talking about mobility. He's banged up, but he's not banged up as badly as some people, you know, and that's what happens, like, because, man, that's sad, you know, it's sad, like, it's stuff from the damage, and I got a lot of damage, is you can physically still do it, and you still do it, but your body won't let you because you don't have the range of motion. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've spent I spent a big part of the last 5 years just undoing old injuries, you know, and I'll thank Vladimir for that directly and indirectly through Bill. These guys got smart figuring out you gotta learn, you better get these joints mobile. Not only does it become really difficult for anybody to tie you up in holds because you can pop and slip out of stuff so easily, but it's you see where it starts to correct old muscle imbalances. You know, you start noticing, like, I had a semi-frozen right shoulder for decades. Man, that thing now can go anywhere and everywhere it needs to go, and it's because of all the joint work that I learned from those guys. You know, it's really freed my body up, and I didn't realize it, but it's actually brought balance back to muscle groups on how they work together. You know, it's like the injury busting through scar tissue even. I've been really impressed with how well that's worked. It's pretty amazing stuff. I move in a lot of ways. I'm more mobile than I was when I was full-time in this stuff in the 80s. Because even then I had, you know, training specific tension. What happens when you throw a ton of round kicks, Muay Thai style?
Oh yeah.
And muscles develop funny too, because certain muscles move in the same way so much all the time. And
overuse. It's called overuse injury. You know.
Imbalance too. Yeah, extreme. You know, quad heavy, and you know your hamstrings are underdeveloped. Your inner thigh muscles are nowhere, and you got to rebalance all that stuff and get symmetry back. Then you can really move. That's the thing I've learned, and it's like my body's younger than it was when I was 20. I mean, in so many ways, it's amazing. So folks need to know that. Be careful, you know, what you do, and you'll pay for it later. You know, you got to keep yourself really balanced and loose.
Well, you know, yeah, we can do a segment sometime about training methods that most people don't know about, because I'm thinking exactly about what you're talking about here, and I don't want to talk about it right now, but because I don't want to give away something right now, you know. But we can do that because you're talking about things that most people don't know about, and I also have other things that could add to the other exercises, other ways of training actually that would help for that. And yeah, I mean, so there's a lot to it, you know, like we said months ago. There's a lot to this journey, you know.
Sure.
And there's checklists that you should make, you know. Like and the point of this talk is, like, you have a tribe, you know. To have a checklist, you have a tribe, you have a bunch of people, or not even a bunch, 1, 2, 3 people that you can count on, that share your point of view, that share your goals, but that you can actually be around. I'm not talking cyber, I'm not talking this, you know, Facebook garbage. I'm talking about an in-person, real meeting. You know, you have that. If you don't have that, you should try to develop it or go meet people that can do that with, you know. And once again, I mean, you know, here's a point where I should once again say to people, if they're anywhere near you, you're in St. Louis, Missouri, off the middle of the country of the United States, they contact you, and you're on Facebook, Ken O'Neill on Facebook. What's the name of your
O'Neill Marshall Systems?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's O'Neill Marshall Systems. So you know, I constantly recommend people anywhere in that area to go see you, because you've got a wealth of information, a whole lot of experience, obviously, and they're missing out. You know, I mean, you don't lose. You're not going to lose anything by going to talk to Ken. Now,
Thank
he
you.
doesn't accept everybody. You know, you've got to impress him. So learn some card tricks. Hey, if you really want to kiss up to him, go in and talk jazz, because I don't know what's
baby.
But there you go. But I mean, that's, you know, I mean, because I think sometimes people don't realize that we're not just talking to talk. We're also saying, hey, we're out here, we're available, you know.
Yeah.
And I have, you know, I have that problem with people in Southeast Asia. They don't realize it. Well, number one, they don't want to. They want to diminish who the hell I am because, that's one of the things. Because if I'm so great, then it makes everyone else look like they're not shit. But I didn't hold them back. You know what I'm saying? Because they can't match my credentials. They can't, and I'm not the one that limited them. It's like
People are strange that way. We had this in part of another talk. It's like you were bringing out. It's like, well, I don't know. Somehow we went down the path, and you said something like, so these JKD guys out in West County in St. Louis, have they ever had you in for a workshop? Have they ever talked to you? Have they ever even looked you up? No. And that, to me, that's some kind of weird version of fear, because I was the opposite. I heard Stan, where are you getting this from, Stan? This guy, Mike Sandlin. It's dangerous for me to go to East St. Louis in 1972, but let's go anyway. I want to meet this guy. I want to learn from this guy. Then Jay and I meet. Next thing you know, it's like, well, shit, I'm flying out to meet Dan and the son of my son. So I'm out of Jay's camp. I'm meeting, it's like guys that want to do what you did. You've done it even a much greater level than I have as far as traveling to train with people. Holy cow, you've been all over the place. I've done all mine within the States, but still, it's the same notion that we're willing to travel. We've gone out, we've sought out other people rather than fearing them because they have things that we haven't learned yet or better than us. You sure as hell ain't going to get them sitting home staring at the computer. You better get your ass out there and seek these people out and train with them. These damn people where you are should be like banging your door down to get.
Yeah, and this is the thing, because in a case of this sort of situation, you got people who. They're real fanboys of these people who started after I did. I said and did everything they're trying to do and did more. You know what I mean? Oh, these guys were bouncers. I bounced. I was the bodyguard. I did military. I did all these things. I was a professional fighter. They don't match that. The people I trained with were at a higher level. I fought at a higher level. I did it, on 3 continents of professional fighting. And I've been on more continents, learning from different people who were the thing. I am a world expert. And to try to dismiss that by saying some idiot from somewhere else is somehow advanced beyond me. Are you kidding me? We paid the dues for this. We did not hold these other guys back. But you got to be realistic and say their operational experience does not match mine. And it's not boasting. It's just telling you the truth. It's the same thing with somebody who was an astronaut, and somebody who is flying is trying to get a Cessna license. You know what I mean? The astronaut is clearly far more advanced and has more experience than this Cessna pilot. And the thing is, this is what never held you and I back, or Jay. Jay's another good example.
Yeah, he's another big one.
Yeah, we looked at who's the guys that we should learn from. Like, who are they? Who are these astronauts? Let's go to the astronauts. You know what I mean? Let's, and once you go to an astronaut, you're like, well, man, these Cessna pilots don't know jack shit. They think they do, but they don't. And it's a whole different. The wealth of our experience cannot be expressed to people who don't have it.
Well, it's called paying your dues and putting in the time. You're not going to get it just watching videos, man. It's hands on. You gotta get out there and get dirty.
Well, it's part about recognizing the tribe, and recognizing that there's some warrior chiefs, and that there might be some local warrior chiefs, but when you get to the big whatever, the big battles, there's some guys above them, and it's like you might have been in your little area thinking, wow, this guy's pretty good, or this guy's regionally good, or whatever. But then when you start dealing with, like, let's talk, whatever, Geronimo or somebody, winning battles, Sitting Bull, winning major battles all the time. This guy is above the guy that was, whatever, Cahokia Mounds.
You're right. So,
but anyway,
we're gonna have to wrap it here. I gotta get.
So I was gonna say. So it's kind of we kind of zigzag down this, but just the take, you know, people, what are the major things you should remember from this? You know, some people like to call it takeaways, but you know, it should be like, this is about having a tribe, about establishing a kind of a culture of the people, and knowing what your goals are, and then realizing that you should be aware. That awareness is the key to letting you express your skills in the same life. And then, so anyway, I mean, back to you, Ken. I mean, you know.
No, I think that sums it up. You know, and these seeming divergence paths that we took today, it all connected in. That's why it came out of the flow of the talk. You know, it all still connects back into what the advantages are of having a group. You know, you can't sit there and do this just looking at videos. You know, you got to have training partners, and you got to seek out guys with more experience if you truly want to learn. You know, pull that ego out of there. It's going to wrestle its way back in, but pull it out and set it over here for a minute, and be willing to go in there and open your mind. And like Bootsy said, open your mind, your ass will follow, man. You got to open that mind up if you want to learn anything. If you know, otherwise you're just a chicken shit and you just want to, you know, sit there and talk about it all day, you know. So that's, yeah, they got to go out and create their own tribe. That's the deal, man.
Well, yeah, and we're into expanding our tribe. That's something that we're both open to. And anyway, so we'll be back. Ken and I will be back soon with another talk, going down another. And maybe we're going to get some people in that we've never talked to before, and that are just normal. I'm not normal. I don't want to say abnormal, but that have other ideas about martial arts, and we're gonna talk to them so that you, the listener, the viewer, can get an idea what it is for someone who has a more traditional idea is when they talk to us. Because
I just had a good idea. You know,
yeah.
I got a pretty good chunk of students who've all got 20 and 30 years experience in other arts as well, that have, you know, mostly jumped ship from those arts, and they train with us now. So you can get their perspective on what their path was, what they came up with in their traditional arts,
Yeah.
what led them to let go of that and move in this direction. Some of these guys have a lot of background, and they're good guys. And most of them have watched all the talks too, so they have a clue.
They should be watching.
Yeah.
Hey, Norm, I'm talking to you, Norm.
Yeah.
Lose that weight, Norm, because I don't want to be the fat, slow guy, okay?
Yeah, right.
I'll throw a donut on the damn ground. You're going to bend over if you still can, and I'm going to kick you straight in the grill. You know what I'm saying, Norm? Okay.
That's why I had to bring up something about him. I want to see him slim down even more, because he's really changed a lot since he came back and started training. He's slimmed down a lot more. He's cleaned up his diet a lot. He's exercising more. So see, there you go. The effect of the tribal effect on the.
And I'm motivating him, and he knows it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. As soon as he watches this, he'll go, "Ah, I'll kick him both in the nuts."
I'm giving him a goal here. Come on, Norm. God damn it. Come on, Norm. Get off the ground, Norm. Come on. Get off the ground.
He'll be watching this fight tonight. That'll be good.
Good. Yeah, give me his feedback. But anyway, okay, I know you got to go. I know you
got work calling. Yeah.
We'll end it here, and thanks to the people. Like this video, share this video, send us comments with your real name and real photo, because I don't deal with the people who are trolls and fakes. And we'll see you soon, right, Ken?
Yeah, man. Thanks. Good seeing you.
Okay. Cool news. I'm in the broadcast.
Yeah.